Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman, Mr. McHenry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Paulson, thank you for your service to your country. This hearing is about the actions that took place in regard to one deal that we actually have a good bit of disclosure on because the New York Attorney General's, in essence, public testimony about what occurred with that. The reason why we're having these hearings is about the ramifications for the financial industry going forward. We want to make sure that government officials are really in keeping with what is appropriate. And so that's why this hearing is occurring today. Now, you've had a long history in the financial marketplace as chairman of Goldman Sachs. And, you know, a couple of these great quotes about your service and your actions on Wall Street. You know, one quote that I think says a lot is a Jim Citron column from September last year. He says, describing you as direct, intense, powerful, serious, competitive, can-do, and frankly ballsy. One of his former Goldman Executive Committee members said, quote, Hank hasn't changed at all since he was at Goldman, literally. There's no question by financial analysts or reporters or this committee members about your capacity to finish a deal. And I don't think the President had any concerns about that when he offered you the job. And, you know, another Fortune magazine described you as, back in '03, as the investment community's steeliest, stealthiest power brokers. I mean, we get the deal. You have the capacity to get a deal done. Now, as chairman of the Federal, as chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke had a different set of powers than you had as Treasury Secretary. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely.
So, as Secretary of the Treasury, did you have the statutory authority to fire? Actually, Mr. Schock, if you'll, thanks. You don't make much of a window, Aaron. But as Treasury Secretary, did you have the statutory authority to fire the Board of Directors of Bank of America?
No.
Okay. No. So, in your testimony, you say that I mentioned the possibility that the Federal Reserve could remove management and the board of Bank of America if the bank invoked the MAC clause. So, in essence, you were carrying a message from the Federal Reserve. Is that a good way to characterize this?
Well, I would prefer to characterize it the way I had characterized it earlier. I had had a comprehensive conversation with Ken Lewis in which I reaffirmed the support that he was going to receive from the government because we're committed to every systemically important institution.
And that support is also Fed, Treasury, the whole regulatory.
It's combined, and so we were, and I expressed the view, and I expressed it in strong language, that the MAC was not a legally valid option in the judgment of the Federal Reserve lawyers, and that expressed a judgment that if he were to go ahead and do something like this and endanger his company, Merrill Lynch, and the system, it would be a lack of judgment. And then I explained to him, that the Federal Reserve had the authority to replace management in the board. That's a supervisory authority.
And that last phrase that you said there, that you relayed the Fed's authority to replace the board, had you had discussions with the Fed and your staff had discussions with the Fed that was within their capacity? Well,
what I have said earlier, and I will repeat it, that I have no recollection of Ben Bernanke having ever talked with me directly about that authority. I participated on a number of of calls and meetings where there were staff together, and I don't remember whether I heard someone expressly say that or whether it was just the tone and the forcefulness of that discussion. But I clearly had that understanding, and I think that understanding has been borne out by the emails the committee has released and some other things.
When Mr. Issa asked you in the second set of questions here about this, you said, we explained the Fed's statutory authority.
Right.
Now, did your lawyers say this, or was it the Fed lawyers that said that? Is that hard to recall?
As I said to you, I had that understanding. As you can imagine, when I'm participating in as many discussions and calls, it's different. And what I've told you is I don't remember whether someone expressly mentioned that to me in so many words, or whether it just was a logical conclusion. Because if you had heard the discussions that I'd heard, where if you're running a regulated bank and your regulator says, we don't think this is legally valid, we think if you do this, you're going to cause great harm to your company and to the financial system, it'll be a lack of judgment, and then if someone goes ahead and does that, it's a pretty logical conclusion that maybe even the regulator would be irresponsible if they didn't, if they didn't hold them accountable.
My time is short, and just one final. Oh, my time has expired. Well, I've got additional questions. I hope that we'll have an additional round, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Letting the gentleman finish his line of inquiry. Thank you, Mr. Issa. Mr. Cummings.